Now, I used to live most of my life in fear. The fear of how I was being perceived by other people, the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear that I was somehow unworthy or not good enough for the things that I desired, right? I lived with so much fear. And not only did fear completely control my life, but on the other side of that fear, there was a feeling of low self-esteem and low self-worth, right? And see, when it comes down to people who live with fear, that fear that we live with is almost always accompanied by low self-esteem or low self-worth, right? So I suffered from both of them. I suffered from fear, and as a result of that fear, I suffered from low self-esteem or low self-worth, right? Now, I remember getting to a place in my life in which I was completely fed up. I was tired of living my life in fear. I was tired of waking up every day and not only feeling fearful, but feeling as if I was not good enough. I got tired of waking up with that feeling of low self-worth, right? And I remember a day I really had to be honest with myself. And I had to say to myself, enough is enough. Right? I had to say to myself, something needs to change. I can't keep living my life in fear, living my life in doubt, allowing fear to control and completely run my life, right? I had to be honest with myself. And that day I made an agreement with myself, right? I said to myself that from this day moving forward, I was going to start living my life with more courage. I was going to start taking action even in fear, even in doubt, even when I'm questioning myself. I was going to start taking action. Right? And so, something that I began to realize was that the more I began to take action, the more I began to act from courage, or the more courage I brought into my everyday life, I began to realize that my self-esteem and my self-worth began to grow even when I wasn't necessarily successful, or I wasn't necessarily getting the things that I wanted externally, right? My self-esteem began to grow just from me being courageous, just from me taking action despite the fear and despite the doubt and despite me questioning myself, right? My self-esteem and my self-worth began to grow. That is something that I realized the more I added courage into my life, right? And see, a big reason why a lot of you guys watching this, a big reason why you suffer from low self-esteem, a big reason why you suffer from self-doubt, is because you don't live with courage. It's because you're allowing fear to completely run your life. And the more you begin to add courage into your life, the more you begin to act from a sense of courage, you'll begin to recognize that your self-esteem and your self-worth begin to grow, and you begin to recognize just how much you're capable of, just how worthy you are, just from beginning to live your life with courage. And see, when it comes down to courage, my good people, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to act despite that fear. Courage isn't the absence of self-doubt. Courage is the willingness to act even when you are in doubt, even when you are questioning yourself. And courage isn't necessarily the recognition of your self-worth. Courage is the willingness to act even when you are questioning your self-worth. That is what courage is. Your willingness, your will. See, when it comes on to life, my good people, you need a strong will. Your will in life has to be stronger than your feelings and your emotions. Your will has to be that rock upon which the waves of your emotions crash. Right? That's how strong your will has to be. If you're going through life and you're constantly acting from your feelings, or you're refusing to take action in the presence of a certain feeling or emotion, not only are you going to continuously stay stagnant in your life, but you will never get to a place in which you begin to recognize your self-worth. You will never get to a place in which you step into the version of yourself that loves you, the version of yourself that feels good about you, the version of yourself that makes and takes action in your best interest, if you don't have a strong will. And that's something that I had to realize. I had to realize that it doesn't matter if I'm doubting myself. It doesn't matter if fear is present. It doesn't matter if I was questioning myself. My will had to be strong enough to make the choices and to take action that was in my best interest. Right? That is something that I had to realize. And once I got to a place in which I recognized that, my life completely changed. My life completely changed. Not only did I begin to move forward in my life, but I began to feel good about myself. I began to actually like myself. I began to actually love myself because I was making decisions that were in my best interest. I was acting from courage. See, once you begin to sort of live your life with a bit more courage, a few important things begin to happen, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience here, right? The first thing that begins to happen, the more you begin to live with courage, is that you begin to develop self-trust. If you can't trust yourself to make decisions, to make choices that are in your best interest, you will never get to a place in which you truly love yourself. You will never get to a place in which you have a high self-esteem and high self-worth if you can't trust yourself to make decisions that are in your best interest. Right? So your courage, your will has to be strong enough to push past your fear, has to be strong enough to push past your self-doubt and your self-judgment to make the choices that are in your best interest. Right? Whatever that looks like to you. Whatever, it doesn't matter if it's going after that relationship. It doesn't matter if it's applying for that job. It doesn't matter if it's starting that business. When your will and your courage is strong enough to push past those emotions, you begin to develop self-trust. And self-trust is a non-negotiable when it comes on to having a high self-esteem. If you can't trust yourself, you won't ever feel good about yourself. If you can't trust yourself, you won't ever truly love yourself. It is impossible. You gotta have self-trust to step into self-love. There's no way around it. Right? The second thing that begins to happen once you begin to act from courage is that you begin to come into alignment, right? And when I talk about alignment, or when I reference alignment in this context, what I mean is that when your desires, when your wants begin to line up with their actions, meaning you begin to act in accordance to your desires, you come into alignment with yourself, right? If you desire a certain thing, if you desire a certain life, and there is a part of you that is refusing to take action towards those things or towards that life, you're going to be misaligned because you're not acting with the highest version of yourself, right? The highest version of yourself is the version of you that is taking action in accordance to your desires and to your interests, right? So once you begin to act from courage, right? And you act in the sense that you begin to move towards your desires, you come into alignment with yourself. And that is how you become the highest version of yourself, because you're no longer preventing yourself from stepping into that version. You're allowing yourself to move towards that you. Move towards the you that feels worthy. Move towards the you that feels good enough. Once you begin to live with a lot more courage, right? So that feeling of inadequacy that you're feeling, that feeling of self-doubt, that feeling of not being good enough, is because you're misaligned. And a big reason why you're misaligned is that you're not taking the action that is in your best interest. A huge reason. That's something that I had to recognize in my own self. And the more I began to act from a sense of courage, the more I began to come into alignment with myself, and the more peace I began to feel within me, the more joy, the more love that I began to develop for myself, right? Now the third thing, I'm sure there are more, but I'm just talking about the three things that I personally noticed. The third thing that began to change when it comes on to acting from a sense of courage is that I began to become free. I began to have this feeling of freedom of expression, right? See, when you're in fear, you're in a cage. Fear literally keeps you trapped in a cage. Once you begin to live with courage, you free yourself. You free yourself to be yourself. You free yourself to act and take action that is in your best interest. You free yourself to begin to pursue the life that you want to live. You free yourself all around, right? Courage is a component of love. Love is courageous. Love is free. And once you begin to add more courage into your life, you begin to become a lot more free. See, when it comes on to this thing that we call life, my good people, you need courage. It doesn't matter what area of your life you're talking about. You need courage in every single area of your life. Even in this world, you need courage to even like yourself. You need courage to even love yourself. Because there are so many different forces that want you to hate yourself. So many different forces that want you to hate the person that you wake up to every day. So you need even courage in this world to actually like yourself, to actually love yourself. Courage is a non-negotiable when it comes on to this thing that we call life. And if you allow yourself to continuously live in fear, If you don't begin to add courage into your life, not only will you stay stagnant, but you will stay in a place in which you continuously dislike and hate yourself. And courage is the freedom that you're looking for. Courage is the tool that you need to break free from the prison that you've created. You need more courage in your life. You need to begin to act from a sense of courage. You need to begin to push past that fear. You need to begin to push past that self-doubt and make the choices and take the actions that are in your best interest. You need courage. You need it. Right? There's no way around it. You need courage in this thing that we call life. And see, I'm going to give you guys a secret of life, right? This is a secret of life that I had to sort of come to recognize, right? A huge secret of life is that you first have to know, you first have to decide, you first have to choose the person who you want to be, and you have to begin to act in accordance with that person even before the feeling of being that person arrives. I'm going to say it again. Listen closely. You have to know. You have to decide. You have to choose who you want to be. And you have to act in accordance with that person, that highest version of yourself, even before the feelings of being that person arrives, right? And what I mean by that is you have to picture in your mind who you want to be. You have to see that version of yourself. The version of you that is courageous. The version of you that is peaceful. The version of you that is loving. The version of you that embodies self-love. You have to see that version of yourself in your mind. You have to picture that version of yourself. And you have to act in alignment with that person even before the feeling of being that person arrives. Right? And your actions, you moving in accordance with that highest version of yourself, is going to be the bridge that connects you with that version of you. Is going to be the bridge that allows you to become that person. So it doesn't matter if currently you're fearful. It doesn't matter if currently you're in doubt. It doesn't matter if you currently don't recognize your self-worth. It doesn't matter. Picture, imagine the person who you want to be. Imagine that ideal version of yourself and ask yourself, how would that person move? What decisions would they make? What choices would they make? And you have to begin to make those choices to connect you with that ideal version of yourself. That is one of the biggest secrets when it comes down to this thing that we call life. You have to be that person before you even become that person. I'm going to say it again. You have to be that person before you even become that person. Right? Know who you desire to be. See that version of yourself. And do the things, take the actions that are in alignment with that version of yourself. And the more you do that, the more you take action, is the more you'll become aligned with that person. But to do any of that, you need courage. Courage is non-negotiable when it comes down to this thing that we call life. And a lot of us in this world, the reason why we suffer from low self-esteem, the reason why we suffer from low self-worth, the reason why we fail to recognize our value is because we lack courage. But the more courage you bring into your life, the more you begin to act from a sense of courage, the more your life moves forward. And not only does your life move forward, but the more you begin to step into and recognize your self-worth. So it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what area of life, you need courage. Courage is essential. Courage is non-negotiable when it comes down to becoming the highest and the ideal version of yourself, right? So yeah, hopefully I explained things properly in this video, so you guys can understand what I'm saying. I think I did a good job explaining it. And once again, this is my personal experience. These are things that I've lived and I'm currently living. On some days I might fail to live with courage, and that's okay. I identify where I fell short, and I pick myself up, and I do better the following day. I live with more courage the following day. So don't beat yourself up if you get on this journey of don't beat yourself up if you get on this journey of implementing more courage into your life, and you have days in which fear overtakes you, or you don't actually move forward with courage. Don't get defeated. Just identify where you fell short and pick yourself back up the next day to go again. That's how this thing that we call life is. You're going to fall, you're going to have dips, you're going to have detours, but you can always find your way back, and you can always pick yourself back up again, right? You're never defeated until you accept defeat, right? Never defeated until you accept defeat. That's the only time you are ever defeated in this thing that we call life. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here with me. Take care of yourselves. I genuinely love every single one of y'all who watch these videos, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace and blessings.